Everyone, welcome back. This afternoon we have Shane Etzold from the Kansas Department of Labor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Rachel said, Department of Labor, Industrial Safety and Health, Shane Etzold. I am the Public Sector Supervisor. What I have today is just kind of an overview of the services and the things we kind of do and provide, not only for K-State, but for public employees across the state. I want you guys to think of this as a conversation. So if I'm going through this and you guys don't understand or you have a question, comment, concern, we'll stop and talk about it. This is just common things that we see. And once we get going through this, you'll see there's a pattern. There's a specific sort of set of things that we look for that apply here, lab safety situations, shops, field staff. So you'll see it's kind of a pattern that we're going to go through. Oh, see, this doesn't work already. Okay. Is it? Oh, all right. Now we're working. So kind of the things we'll talk about at the opening conference, who we are, why we do what we do, and kind of the authority that we have. The written programs, things that entities such as universities, cities, counties, school districts, what have you, private businesses, the programs that they're supposed to have and why they're important. And then the kind of things that we see in a typical walkthrough inspection. So this is the big thing, the opening conference, this is what gives us the authority as state employees to visit a city or a university like this. State statute, the 44636. Take your time and read it if you like. Basically, this says we have the authority to come in to any type of facility. As you can tell, it's been written a long time ago, needs updating. But this is the authority. We can come in and make sure that the employers in the state of Kansas that are doing business are providing a safe, healthy working environment for their employees. Now I'm going to ask you guys a question. Anywhere in there, does it talk about OSHA? Does it talk about how you're supposed to provide that safe working environment? No. So what do you do as an employer or as an employee? What am I supposed to do? Anybody? I'm listening here. Okay. All right. So like it says, it's the Secretary of Labor gives us this authority to come in there, and you can pull that up and look at it if you'd like. It's fine. I'll just point at you.
If I keep that menu open, you're good.
Okay.
I won't click on it.
So can folks explain to me the difference between Kansas Department of Labor and OSHA? You guys have to talk here.
Federal versus state.
Okay. So does OSHA apply to a university setting like this?
By incorporation.
Okay. Okay. So we're kind of getting there. So me as an employer, or I'll say we, don't let me say he or she, I'll say we as an employer have to provide a safe working environment for our employees, right? How are we going to do that? Do we write our own safety rules and regulations, or has that already been done already?
It's been done, you can add to, but you cannot take away.
Sure. Sure, you can make your safety rules more restrictive than an OSHA standard. Can you make them less restrictive? Absolutely not. So again, as an employer, how are we supposed to provide that safe working environment? We don't have to make up our own rules because federal government has already done that, right? So they're already out there. Types of written programs. Does that mean anything? Well, way to go, Justin. Okay, good job. Gotcha. Okay, so written programs, what kind of written programs apply here for you guys? Kind of depends on where you're at a little bit, right? And what you're doing, but what about HAZCOM? Especially in your lab settings, what's important to have as part of your HAZCOM for your lab settings? Okay, what about hazardous chemical inventory? Does that need to be part of it? Sure. Signage, of course. What's another big portion of that? It's got to be written at least, right? Okay. What about training? Does there have to be training? Sure. Absolutely it does. Has to be done annually. What about documentation? If I don't document my employees' training, did it really happen? Maybe not. If there's no paper trail, right? There's no record of training. We need to go back. There we go. Okay, so any other thoughts about hazard communication? Inventory?
Program inventory, signage, GHS pictograms.
Any questions about HAZCOM? Okay, what about lockout, tagout? When does that apply? Uncontrolled startup of hazardous energy. So does that apply to everyone in this room? Maybe, maybe not, depending on your role. If I, as a mechanic or an electrician, absolutely, it probably does. Again, lockout, tagout programs has to be documented training, has to be written. There has to be processes and forms, correct? Emergency action plan. I know the university does have a pretty solid emergency action plan. What kind of things are covered in that? I don't want all the answers from this side of the room, guys. Okay, emergency contact, what to do in the event of, right? Fire, spill, active shooter anymore. So absolutely, tornadoes, maybe earthquakes, floods, all the things, right? Has to be written, has to be available. Do I have to know it as an employee? Sure, absolutely. What about students? You guys deal with students here, right? Does that cover them as well? Sure, absolutely. Okay, bloodborne pathogen, another big one, you know, especially in lab settings, broken glass, what could happen there? You know, the program to control the cleanup of, we'll say, juices, you know, could be fluids, whatever. Okay, general duty clause, has anyone ever heard of that? Okay, I got a couple of folks there, and all that is, it says me as an employer is required to provide a safe working environment for my employees. Seems simple enough, right? So it says the employer shall, that means must, provide that causing or likely to cause death, serious harm to your employees. How would you know that though? What if it's a hazard you're not aware of? Would that still cover that? Would that still apply? Sure. Absolutely, sure would. Now you as employees of the university, where could you go for a resource to find out about, hey, I have a concern about this setup in my workspace? Do you guys have anywhere to go with that? Yeah, they're sitting right over here, right? Sure. So you guys already have an internal resource to find answers to those questions, and I encourage you to use those. Me, you can give me a call. At the end of this, you guys are welcome to take one of my business cards. Sure, I'll answer your questions. You guys already have the internal resources to go to and talk to about those things. So if you have a question, they can find you an answer. This is a big part, and I know that, you know, your EHS team talked about this already previously, but it's very important. Can anybody tell me why incident reporting is important? Not these guys, you guys. Okay, Okay. To let somebody know something happened, right? It's not just to give these folks a job. They don't want more paperwork, but besides, once you're aware of something that's going on, why is this important? Right, so you want that nicked finger incident report before you have a lost finger accident, right? So you can stop the problem before it gets started. They can track, well, they're using a lot of Band-Aids in the metal shop. Let's figure out why they're getting a lot of nicks, or why our janitorial staff getting a lot of lower back strain. They can get these incident reports, then they can track, hey, we got all these, let's go talk to them, see what's going on with their processes and see what we can do to help them. So it's important to track the data. Everything's analytics anymore. Same thing with safety, right? They can put it on a graph and say, yep, we got a trend here. We need to do something about it and stop the big things from happening. Anything you guys would like to add to this?
Talk about why we do the 8 hours for reportable.
Idea why you got probably for recency. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, that makes sense. Yep, to keep it a standard number, that makes sense within 8 hours, sure. Now, you guys all familiar with the process? Go ahead, sir.
Should incident reporting be limited to people in labs or employees, or should just students or anybody on campus in general be able to report incidents?
And you know,
Makes sense to me, right? Got you a student?
Yep, I'm a student.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome, even better. Yeah, absolutely.
and the answer is if it's unsafe equipment, unsafe conditions, and students are there currently, they're still employees, but there is no difference. The We Care message is we want a safe campus. So yes, any and all.
Right, and that's a good point to make. You know, he doesn't, just because you're a student, doesn't mean you should work in an unsafe environment, right? Okay. And me as an employer, I want to treat you the same as my full-time Ray up there versus my student who's going to be gone in a few years, sure. Okay. So now this is kind of getting into the areas we would look at, and this is, again, very general. So all the places in a facility. And so what I'll do is we'll see a hazard. You guys can take a look at it and tell me why it might be a hazard and why it might matter to you in your working environment. So electrical is always a big one. You know, if you look at this list here, the things that we're concerned about is typically the top 10 list of injuries that happen to employees in the work environment anyway. So obviously electrical is a big one. We spend a lot of time looking for electrical type hazards and down the list. Anything wrong here? Can you guys see anything wrong here, or why it might even be a hazard?
This is the electrical valve.
Okay, yeah, that's a fire guy's catch anyway. That's not what the picture is supposed to be about, but good one on you there. Absolutely. Yeah, what's going on underneath that tape? Is that an approved fix? No, probably not. What's the official stance on cord repair here?
Electrician.
So you're telling me that if I put my electrical tape around that?
Electrical tape is not approved repair. There's actually approved materials, electricians and maintenance know.
So you guys have folks that can fix your electrical problems is what we're saying here. Now, what should I do as a student employee or a regular full-time employee when I see something like this? Walk on by and let it slide for the next person? No, you let somebody know, right? Sure. Because if they don't know, it doesn't get fixed. Because I'm not gonna fix it, Jack's not gonna fix it. You know, we're saving it for the next guy, right? What are we looking at here? Kind of some of the same stuff, right? Cords, bag cords, what else though? Anything about that? Got a bent prong and missing a ground. Now, if I have a 3-prong receptacle or a 3-prong end of a cord here, and I only have a 2-prong outlet, can I cut that ground off? No, it's supposed to be there, right? So that's your ground for your employee protection, you know, that exactly right. We're looking at the damage to the jacket. Bent prongs. Can that cord be replaced on that piece of equipment? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you get something new. But absolutely, that's a hazard. And that needs to be reported and addressed. Oh, forgot about those. How many things can we find here?
These things.
Sure. So yeah, we got a ground prong adapter for some unknown reason. Got the ground wire here. Maybe that's where it's supposed to go, maybe not. But is that okay? That kind of end okay in that application? No, absolutely not. How often do we see stuff like this out in the field? It's pretty common. I mean, do you guys have stuff like this at home? He does. That's not good. Okay, circuit breakers. Why is it important to have your electrical panels labeled? Jack, why is it important to have our electrical panels labeled?
Well, I mean, you need to show up any breakers. You'd be able to identify.
Sure, they need to know what it controls, right? So if that piece of equipment's malfunctioning, you need to do maintenance on it, you gotta know what it's controlling, right? Sure, makes sense, right?
So like for any facilities that are listening, if you put GFCIs at the breaker, I like that to be like.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. You know, a question I did have for you guys, when they do have breakers, GFI breakers, do you make them label the receptacles that are covered by that?
We have new buildings, definitely, yes. Older buildings, that's a continuous.
Work in progress, got it. So it says breakers and labeling need to be understood by end users. So, you know, we'll pretend this is a new installation. The guys installing it put these nice little tags on there, but then the folks that work there said, well, these labels don't make any sense to me. This is the science room, this is the library, that's home ec. So they come back in and they labeled them themselves. Unused openings, why is this a concern? You get your hand in there. What are some other issues that might arise there? Depending on the environment. Can dust get in there? You know, what about your metal or wood shops? You know, that can infiltrate the panel, settle in there, and then what do you have? Could have an explosion, right? So it's important to cover those up. Again, we're talking about the workplace. What about home? You guys have these at home? Is it okay at home? Well, you do what you want at your house, right? I know him. He might do it, but you can get the blanks and you can fix them at your house as well. This is a little bit older setup. The angle is a little hard to see, but you know, if I'm up there trying to monkey around and change one of those screw ends, you know, that's got a couple openings there as well. That's not good. So yeah, that's what we're trying to prevent, right? Okay, so when I came across this and took this picture, the janitorial said, oh, we're working on that. We got it tagged out. Is that what we'd like to see? Okay.
At least they're letting you know.
C-wire is
At
hot.
least they're letting you know.
All right, that's appreciated. That's a hot wire, but you know, there's different ways to do that. What's one way they could handle that a little bit better? So we're going back to our panel labeling, right? Flip that breaker off, lock that breaker out, then you have a better, safer environment to work that in. Then you can still leave your sign on there, but blocked out at the source. Okay, how many things we see wrong here? There we got Missing cover. What about down here? A damaged face? Again, any kind of damaged face and things like that need to be replaced. You guys run across things like this, you know, put in your reports and let them know to get it fixed. Who can tell me what these are and what they do? What's that? Okay, GFI receptacle, what do they do though? Where do you typically find these? In wet locations, so locker rooms, bathroom, outside. So, you know, they protect employee protection. These should be tested monthly. You guys have these, a lot of newer homes are built with these now. Are you guys testing those monthly? Yeah, I know I don't test mine. But should you? Absolutely. The reason why they do wear out, they have a service life. If you're not testing them, you know, they might not provide the protection when you need it. Okay, machine guarding is a big thing. I know we're talking about lab safety, can have certain labs that may have this type of equipment in there. So machine guarding is a big point, a big topic whenever we're out and about looking at facilities, you know, point of operation. So, you know, saw blades, drill presses, things like that, you know, nip points. So we run across this pretty frequently. You know, what types of things are we looking at? You know, this is your typical pedestal grinder that we'll find in metal shops, maintenance shops, things like that. You know, you're looking for the distance between your work rest and your stone. Even your tongue guard and the top of the stone as well. So we're looking for 1/8 of an inch there between the work rest and your stone there. And the gap between your tongue guard and the top stone needs to be 1/8 of an inch. Can you guys see anything else that might be a problem here? So we have that spindle nut exposed, it's partially exposed. That guard needs to be expanded out, so that's covered. What about the condition of this stone? Does that look like it might be bad? So that's not wearing evenly, so it could cause the stone to fail prematurely. You know, and that's worn down pretty far, so time to get a new one anyway. Okay. So metal saw, you know, that a lot of times we'll find these and that's been removed. But this needs to be articulating, so when you operate the saw, that'll move out of the way so you can cut your material and not be exposed to the rotating part. Okay, so we have like an air compressor or vacuum pump, what have you, any kind of belt and pulley system. You know, not limited to this, could be HVAC equipment as well. You know, we're looking for guarding of that belt and pulley system. You know, something like this. This is a homemade type guard, but is that sufficient? Can you get to it? Can you get to that point of operation between the belt and the pulley? No. So that's a good looking homemade guard there. You know, this is something that we do find though, is no belt, no pulley. Then you have nip points. So depending on which way that's running, you know, if that's going counterclockwise here, you know, here's your nip point. So that's where your hand, your finger, your shirt is going to get caught between the belt and the pulling, potentially suck you in there. Okay, do you guys have any of this on campus? I don't know how much in your possibly your labs and things like that, just a buffing setup. And so what we're looking at here is these set screws. And what would be the problem with the left compared to the right? So those are protruding, right? So then potentially you could get hung up on those. So those are flush. So you're not worried, you're not going to get caught up in those. but those are protruding, so that gives, there's potential there for you to get entangled in that. This is mechanical, a lot of mechanical rooms have these recirculation pumps. There's a shaft between the motor and the pump. And there's a guard that needs to be in place. Obviously, when they're doing work, that comes off. Once they're done, that needs to be put back, the guard needs to be put back on before it returns to the service. Okay, fire protection. Come on down, Jack. So no, fire protection is a big deal in universities and cities, counties for sure. I know you guys have a little bit better program than maybe a city would, just because there's somebody that's their full-time job. So we'll kind of be brief on this. Obviously, they need to be inspected monthly. That can be by an outside vendor, can be done internally. Needs to be serviced annually. What about installation heights? Jack, how high can they be?
It depends on.
Sure.
It's the 40, I think 40 pounds is the deciding factor. I got a fire extinguisher expert here, but.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Let's see.
You can help him, so he's not struggling in front of the group.
Let's see, no more than 5 feet.
There you go.
40 pounds, 340 pounds.
There you go, absolutely. Anything else wrong with this picture here? What's that? It's pull station for a fire alarm. But can you tell that from the picture? Not hardly. So, you know, this is a paint booth situation. This is in a high school. And of course, you know how high school kids are, right? So they painted the pull station. So, not good, right? Okay, obstructed, got to be able to get to them regardless of weight. Can't store things in front of them. Can't get to them, can't use them, right? What's the distance do we need to keep open around our extinguishers? Okay, is that right? Okay, we're just checking.
We learned that earlier.
Oh, just that time. All right. So take a look at this setup here. How many things do you see wrong? At least one, because there's a big yellow arrow pointing at it, right? What else though? That door is an exit door. Sure. But what's this? Okay, so presumably stocked full of flammables. You know, never mind all the combustibles stored around it, right? So if that's our exit route, do we really want to have our flammable cabinet in that exit route? No, obviously you need to think about reconfiguring that. So we couldn't get to our extinguisher if we needed to when our flammable cabinet catches on fire because of all the combustibles we got stored around it, right? So a lot of things going on here.
Anything about items specifically sitting on top of the cabinet, Shane?
What about
Or
it?
just, I mean, we just have combustibles around it. I don't think the code really talks about, you know, specifically like an amount or of like combustibles sitting on the cabinet or on top of the cabinet.
Well, it does talk about storing, you know, the combustibles in the cabinet, so you have your flammable, but then, you know, you store combustibles in there, so there is things in there about storage inside.
Right.
Just apply it to apply it to the area, sure. Or, you know, we talked about the 5A1. I mean, if it looks like it might be a problem, you know, why just stop at the code? You know, go one step further and clean it up and make it look nice. Do you really think all that material needs to be there anyway? No. Okay, so talks a little bit about sprinkler. You know, they just need to have these secured. Reason being, you know, me as a bad actor could go in there and try to monkey with the sprinkler system and then set the building on fire so that the system wouldn't activate. Needs to be secured. Typically, these are behind locked doors. But if you have any kind of stage area, you might have them out on a stage. So they're more out in the open to where somebody could go tamper with them. Gotta have, they need to be provided typically by the sprinkler installer, spare heads in case one gets damaged or activates. I don't imagine, do you guys replace those yourselves if one gets activated or damaged?
Jason, our park protection company.
So you contract it, so you're not doing it yourself? Okay. Any kind of paint booth, sprinkler heads need to be protected from overspray, so they're not getting coated with paint where they may not activate when they need to. What we're seeing here is they got just a paper bag with the rubber band on there to protect it. Those bags do need changed out, because if they get coated too much, they might not burn up either. That's the thing to take a look at. You know, more on sprinkler head sprinkler head. You know, if they're near a HVAC return, you may get lint buildup on those. So take a look at your sprinkler heads. If they're fuzzy, they need cleaned. What do you guys do for a fuzzy sprinkler head around here? Does your janitorial have authority to blow them off or brush them down, or how do you do that?
They do.
Okay.
They're using the spray.
Okay.
Yeah, just use just spray in the air.
Okay,
Spray in air.
they're not getting a broom and trying to brush them down. Okay, okay. Okay, housekeeping, you know, this is always a big issue. I mean, if I don't take care of it, the next guy will, right? Well, not necessarily. You know, if I'm not looking out for my fellow employee, leave my work area a mess, you know, you're setting yourself up for trouble. It's everyone's responsibility. You know, can't count on janitorial staff to be able to catch all the issues anyway. So, you know, like we're talking about here, it's everybody's responsibility to keep their work area clean, labs, shops, you know, what have you, even shared vehicles. That's something that we deal with a lot in the state, is we share vehicles. You know, it could be a housekeeping issue if they're not taking care of them. Okay, so this, talking about housekeeping, looking at housekeeping, you see any problems here? Sure, lots of stuff, absolutely right. You know, you got spills on the floor. You know, so now you got a fall hazard. May have an environmental issue, possibly, depending on what you're working with. You know, we don't know what that is. We can't see a label on there. You know, presumably it's oils or some things like that. But, you know, if I'm working in that area, I slop this mess and I walk off. Rachel's walking right behind me and she goes down, you know, whose fault really is it? Is it Rachel's for falling on it, or me for leaving it there for Rachel to fall on? Okay, PPE. Why is PPE important? I know you guys talked about the hierarchy and PPE as the last resort, meaning that's the last line between you and an injury or you and a hazard. But what's important about PPE? For me as an employee, I need to know how to wear it correctly. I need to know how to clean it, and I need to know how to store it, right? What's another big thing I need to know about my PPE? Yeah, what is it? If I'm welding, are safety glasses really gonna protect me from that arc on that arc welder? So you need to know what your PPE is gonna protect you from. And how are you gonna get that information? Hopefully from your supervisor, right? And how would they know that information? Because they're gonna do a job hazard analysis. They're gonna know what you're gonna be exposed to while you're doing that certain task, right? They're gonna look at, hey, we're doing a welding operation. What potential injuries could happen while we're doing this process? And then through that, which you guys have a form for, correct? Through that form, at the end of it, if you can eliminate it, can't do your other things to get rid of that hazard, finally come down to what type of PPE you could use to protect yourself while you're doing that task. Okay, we talked about storage. Is that a good way to store some safety glasses? Yeah, if you shut it, right? If you leave it open in the wood shop and the dust is in there, maybe not. This, not so much, right? Yeah, you got PPE, but is it any good? I wouldn't want to wear these. And so now I'm gonna try to get my task done without wearing my glasses, right? So that's a problem. Lab setting, do you guys have this kind of setup here? I mean, they're hung up, that's okay, right? Well, at least you guys aren't doing that. But what's the problem with storing them like that? Something can get down in there, right? And if I'm not cleaning it or inspecting it before I put it on, you know, I could be dumping stuff into my eyes, sure. Storage, is this good storage for a filtering face piece? Nope, absolutely not. You do not want to share them. That's a good point. Are these one-time use? Yeah. So walking, working surfaces, you know, this could be how you're keeping your work area. This is back to housekeeping, right? So what are we looking for here? You know, this is our egress path. You know, can I get to that exit? Sure can. But whose responsibility is that to clean up? I mean, if it's my area, I gotta keep that clean, right? Should I wait until EHS comes through and does their spot check? Or fire comes through and does their spot check and say, hey, get this crap out of the exit way? No, it's up to me, right? I should know that. That's not new, is it? You know, what we hear frequently, oh, we just got a shipment in. This is new. We'll get this moved here. So, you know, get it in, get it put up, get it out of the way. See anything wrong here? That floorboard there? You know, if you got any kind of raised or lowered greater than a ½ inch, you need to do something about that. You got a trip hazard. Sump pits, could that be a trip hazard or fall hazard? Sure. Can I cover it with a material? Okay, yes, I can. It needs to be substantial. So that means I need to be able to stand on it and not collapse, right? Okay, any problems with this railing right here? It's good they have railing on steps. You need to have railings on steps that are 4 or more. So they have railing, but could we do better here? Absolutely. We need to be able to get our hand around that railing. Because if I'm walking down there and I start to stumble, I'm not going to be able to grasp that and catch myself, am I? So you need to have a gap so you can get your hand in there. Overhead storage. It's okay to have overhead storage. You need to protect the edges so you can't fall off, right? Okay. Or you could just not store stuff overhead, I suppose.
Load rating
What's that?
and load rating.
That's a good point. Load rating, you know, is that even built to be stored on? Or does somebody just throw up some plywood and say, put your stuff up there? So definitely needs to be load rated and need to know what you can put up there. Where I looked at this one here. Emergency lighting. What can you tell me about emergency lighting? Got to be tested. We got some in the back there. How frequently are we testing those? Okay. Okay, did everybody hear that? Annually, you test it for 90 minutes, and what are you doing when you're testing it for 90 minutes? You're checking that battery, right? See how long it's gonna last. Your 30-second test, what are you looking for there? See if the dang thing even works, right? Make sure the bulbs aren't burnt out, make sure it comes on, sure. What about documentation? Should I document those tests? Yeah, again, we talked about it. If you don't document what you're doing, did it really happen? So wood shops, but this could apply to metal shops. This could apply to your maintenance shops. You know, machine guards, instructor's bias. So this one always infuriates me when I go to a high school. So we'll see a table saw set up. And the instructor is showing the kids how to run the table saw without the guard. Is that a problem? Of course it is. The instructor tells me, well, I can't run the piece of equipment and show the kids how to work it without the guarding. But then the kid gets on there and says, well, teacher didn't do it, why do I have to do it? So, you know, it's up to the instructor to show the student how to do the job correctly and safely. Because it's not gonna be his finger cut off, it's gonna be the students or the employees. And of course, there are lawsuits. There was a big one in Wichita that a kid lost 2 fingers because they were operating a table saw without a guard. And this, you know, one of the things, well, that's how we were taught to use it, is without the guards in place. Well, that's a problem.
Maker spaces on campus that have these.
Table saw? Oh, sure, that makes sense, yeah. Yeah, and those are becoming more common, so you don't just have a BOAG shop, you have your BOAG shop, and then you have your maker space with your 3D printers and whatever else you need to do it, so yeah, absolutely. So you're just adding more potential for hazard in different parts of the building. Hand tools, need to inspect them before use, they need to be in good condition before you use them, and you need to use the right tool for the right job. So I know Ray's a redneck. Do you see any difference between these 2 things right here?
No.
Okay, so we got 2 chisels, right? Or do we? Okay, so you need to talk to him. So, right, the correct tool for the correct job, right? And why is that? Well, that screwdriver could fail, cause you an injury, sure. See these frequently because, you know, we want to keep using that hammer. We're going to save it. Save the university a little bit of money by tapping the nail in there to maybe keep that head on there a little bit better, a little longer. You can get new handles. You can get them replaced. They need to be, you can get a wedge so they're more secure so you're not losing the hammerhead while you're working it. What about this, Ray? See something like this before? Yeah. So you need a wide chisel, you make your own. But what about the mushroom head here? That could be a problem. Could spoil, right? I wouldn't use it. I'd get a screwdriver, right? Okay. You're just paying attention here. All right. The screw in, sure. Table saw. What do we need to see on a table saw? How many parts are up here? So we're looking for the blade guard. We're looking for the kickback fingers or dogs or whatever you want to call them. And we're looking for a spreader. All 3 of those typically are incorporated in this single piece. They need to be there when you're using a standard blade. Are there instances when you can use your table saw without this apparatus on there? Sure there is. Have to have a dado blade on there though. Got some pictures of those.
We also look for expendable tools somewhere in the shop.
Oh, like a push stick? Okay, I got you. Yep. Which, right there. Got your push stick as well. So this is what we're talking about here. You got your fence, but you got no guarding. I mean, could it be an issue? Yeah, again, depending on the blade. There we go. We got a dado blade. But why is that okay? Just because it's a dado blade, why is that okay? When you're running a piece of lumber over a dado blade, is that blade going past the top of the piece of wood? No, it's covered with the wood, right? You're cutting a slot in there. So looking at this joiner here, you know, this is a good setup. They're collecting their wood dust. You know, you're not having housekeeping issues where, you know, potentially could have a slip hazard. That wood dust is darn slippery. And, you know, you're doing a lot of work. Feet could go out from under you, contact with that rotating head. Band saws, You know, what we're looking for here is an adjustable leg guard. How close does that need to be from your material? Joe, I'm asking, I can't remember. It's close, though. It's like 1/4 inch, isn't it?
Yeah, quarter inch.
Yeah.
Yep.
So same thing here, protect you, contact with that blade,
And then not in use, you're supposed to drop.
drop it all the way down, absolutely. So we're looking at this and I know you're thinking, hey, we already talked about machine guarding on these. But what I'm looking at here is a pressure relief valve. So what these vessels do is they sit there and they can bleed down. And what we're looking at is it doesn't over pressurize. So this has got a gauge and these will release pressure every so often to prevent failure.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say petcock and getting oil and you're going to it.
Yeah, no problem. And so, you know, why is that problem? And what we're trying to look at there is, you know, there's material that builds up in the bottom and it can corrode, cause it to fail over time, get leaky. You know, wood lathes got guards that need to come over the rotating piece of material. For whatever reason, those seem to disappear pretty quickly after a piece of equipment shows up. But needs to be in place. And again, it's not only protecting the operator, you know, it could be protecting the folks behind you as well. So I'm gonna skip forward till we can get your lab stuff because we're getting kind of close on time. We'll talk about this a little bit. So, you know, wood shops, important to talk about this. Again, we're talking about chemical storage and things like this. You know, what kind of condition are your flammable cabinets in? You know, do those doors latch? Does it even turn? What about self-closing doors? Do those need to self-close? Yes, absolutely. You know, if they're not closed, they're not in good repair, they're not really going to provide you much protection for your flammables. Or can you even get to them and get them open? I guess that's okay too. You know, looking at spray finishing area, any kind of wiring or electrical in a spray finishing area needs to be explosion proof. Obviously with the aerosol finishes, you know, you can have some pretty dangerous situations otherwise. You know, more ground prong issues there. You know, here's what it looks like once they fix those electrical panels with plugs. That's a nice setup. What we don't want to see, I don't have it. So you don't want to put silver tape on there because that doesn't provide any protection, does it? Or even the electrical tape. So you're looking for a physical barrier between yourself and the openings. Skip to the, I got something here. And we'll talk about this. Cylinder storage. You guys have cylinders in your maintenance shops, probably obviously your work shop. Need to have separation between your acetylene and your oxidizers, right? Can't store them together. Either empty or full cylinders, they all need to be separated. Can't be stored together. So we got your acetylene here, your oxygen here. And similar things here. So how far apart do they need to be? My fire guys know.
50?
What? That's like next week. 20 feet? Or what else could we do?
Suitable barrier.
A suitable barrier, so 30-minute fire barrier that's 5 feet tall. So it's easier just to move them 20 feet apart. Cylinder storage here, you know, if that racking isn't secured to the wall and those are chained to your rack, is that really secure? Yeah, probably not. They all could tip together, right? When in storage, do they have to have their caps? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it? They got their acetylene on one side, oxygen on the other. Maybe about 20 feet. I don't have my tape measure with me, but that looks pretty close, right? That's a little bit better setup. That's okay. You know, if I saw this, I'd like to see those chains a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
So they're, you know, that,
Are always a problem.
yeah, I mean, so it's nice, they got a rack for it, you know, if there was 3 cylinders in there, it probably wouldn't be an issue, a single, yeah, you might have a tip issue there. Here for sure, right? That's not suitable for what we're looking at. Where's my environmental people? Taking a look at a paint booth. When's the last time they changed the filters on that? Maybe been a decade. So those need to be changed regularly, disposed of properly. Depending on your finishes, they might end up being hazardous waste, right?
That's a huge fire hazard though, when those are thick loaded.
And you know, I won't say always, if they have a spray finishing booth, we find these frequently because the school can't afford to replace the filters like they should. You know, it's expensive to do. And, you know, so they try to prolong the usage on them, you
Maybe
know.
that should be shown.
Well, yeah, burn up a paint booth is not as much as some filters, right? I'm gonna try to get to your lab stuff here. Service shops. Getting close, I promise. Okay, yay. So here's what we're here to talk about today. So again, you know, you have your vacuum pumps. We've already talked about machine guarding. Absolutely, this could be in a lab setting, depending on what's going on. You know, what do we need to do here? Guard the piece of equipment, right? You know, any concerns with storage here? You know, this kind of storage has to have a lip, right? So these aren't gonna fall off. You can kind of tell down here, we have a little bit of lip. Got to be at least a ½ inch. What about my containers? Does it matter how I store those? Sure, it does, absolutely. Without our chemical inventory, would we even know what we have on these shelves? Probably not. I mean, maybe I would if I put them up there, but maybe not. You know, taking a look here, yeah, sorta, maybe, you know, they're trying,
By compatibility, not by.
right? Guys have questions, you have resources here to talk you through how those things need to be stored, right? You know, same thing here, you know, you got different things of different ages. You know, obviously need to keep track of your inventory, know when to dispose of them when they get too old, know how to dispose of them when they get too old. So is that a decent setup there? What's that?
It can be hurt.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they got limited space, so they decide to stack everything. You know, separate that out, right? So maybe your corrosives aren't right on top of your acids or your flammables in the area. You know, looking at this stuff, you know, what are we looking for? Labels, lids, need to know what's in there, right? Is that what that really says it is? You know, we don't know. What about compatibility? You know, we're gonna put oxidizers in with our flammable, corrosives in with our flammable, got to make sure it's compatible when they're soaring, correct? Anybody tell me what that might be? Shut off valve, you guys have gas lines in your labs?
Ones that are getting constructed, they're getting their own shutoffs.
Oh, for each one? That's cool. So, you know, this is typical in the older buildings, just a quarter twist valve. You know, anymore, they're getting the e-stops right by the exit so you can hit it and get out. What's this? eye wash station, what do we know about eye wash stations? When do we need to have them? When you're working with any material that could potentially splash in your eye? So not only your labs, what about my wood shop or welding shop? Sure, maybe paint shop, yeah, absolutely, I'm working with chemicals, working with liquids. Absolutely. What else do we know about eye wash stations? Do we need to take care of them or can they just sit there? Okay. Covered and blocked? Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay, yeah, 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 I'm with you. Uncovered, unblocked. So taking a look at that, I wouldn't consider that accessible. Doesn't look like it's even been maintained, to be honest with you. So when we're testing those, what are we looking for? Make sure it works, right? Does that work? I mean, it came on, so does that count? No. Now, how frequently should we be flushing these? Weekly, there's my guy. Why do we want to flush it weekly?
So there's not stuff that's shooting into your eyes from the pipes.
Right, you don't want any kind of sediment that might be in the water. You're keeping that water fresh in the pipe. How high does the water need to flow? Between 6 and 8 inches? Okay, what's that? Equally, right, that's right.
Dude,
Yeah, you can't average them, so if this one's 12 and this one's 2. Doesn't work that way. Gotta be 6 to 8 equally, there you go. This one being maintained, probably not. What else are we missing from this thing? Caps, why are caps important? We're not getting sediment in the caps, right? Then you're gonna be blowing more crap into your eyes before you get out. Absolutely, that's why it's important to inspect these, that's why it's important to maintain these, and gotta be able to get to them. Looked at that already. So it's a typical picture of a lab setup. You know, I already talked about our GFIs, why those are important. Why do we need them in a lab? So we got our electrical, we got our gas, because we got our water, right? So within our water, what else do we need in our lab if we got gas and we're doing? Got a fire blanket, correct? Same thing here, obviously it needs to be covered.
If they have a fire blanket, inspect the fire blanket.
All you. So whenever I run across them in the lab, I make sure that they're there.
If they're not there, is that a violation with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they need to have those. So if you don't have a fire blanket, you need to get them put back in place. You guys have those a contract somewhere to get them, I assume?
We do have university contracts with Thermo and Granger. But a problem we have with fire blankets is a lot of them are of the age where we'd be concerned with asbestos.
And that's a good point too. Yeah, absolutely. Take a look at them and I wouldn't shake them out. I'd see how old they are first and then I'd make a phone call.
So which labs should have a fire blanket?
If you got gas and you're doing any kind of work with, any kind of heat, definitely need one in there. So I know we're at the end of my time. So I want to respect everybody's noon lunch. Does anybody have any questions?
What would you say about on these fire blankets, if there were a lecture set up with natural gas for demonstrations and things like that, that's occasionally used?
So are you bringing the equipment in like on a cart?
No,
Or
it's
is it already set
it's
up?
bummed in the room and everything, so we would, we might fire up a Bunsen burner to do some kind of demonstration for the class, so there, it's in place.
Yeah, it
So we
would,
need a
I would
fire
say, it
blanket
would-
in the
yeah,
room.
I mean, why wouldn't you want one in there? I mean, something could happen even if it's a lecture setup. I mean, I guess you could burn while your students watch. I don't know. I think
That would get our ratings up, but.
Yeah,
No, and I know that EH&S, we're looking at a couple other, there's a couple other new technologies for fire blankets, but 2024, we were gonna get some just to have for special situations like that. Just have a couple, even for training purposes. So if it's, every once in a while, you have that class let us know and, you know, we can let you use it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Anybody else?
You have your email.
I'll give you a card. You can throw it in the chat if you like. Yeah, no problem. All right, sure.
You mentioned chemical age.
Mm-hmm.
So say that I'm in a chemistry lab, we've got a 20-year-old bottle full of isopropanol, hasn't been opened. We're 100% sure it's good. What's the recertification process on that bottle?
Talk to Rachel. That,
Well, there's two issues there. So for my researchers, they want to make sure it's a good product. So a lot of times I have the contamination issue or the purity issue, but that's where EH&S will actually take that, rebottle it. It's not the original specs, but it could still be useful for someone. So it really depends on what the end user wants to use that for. But there's two things that EH&S looks at is the product integrity, but also the container integrity. And, you know, if I have something from 1940 and, you know, it's in an old glass container and that metal screw-on lid is no good anymore. So it really depends on what the end user wants to use that original chemical for. But it's easy to put it into a new container if it's worth doing so.
Well, when you go to
Yeah, you know, am I using a product for teaching lab versus research where it has to be, all your inputs have to be controlled. So you would want high purity guarantee. So it really depends on what that end user is going to use that for again. You're trying to replicate good science and good research, or are you just doing it for a demonstration, possibly in a class?
all right, anything else? Anything from chat that I'm not seeing?
Or if Zoom wants to unmute and ask a question.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, wait, I wouldn't hear them because we don't have volume.
Okay. All right. You good?
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, let's go ahead. So I know for the listeners online, Kansas Department of Labor has been very supportive of some of our early efforts with health and safety. I know Shane has probably been at K-State here quite a few times and helping us with our improvements in health and safety. So if you have any questions or comments later on, let's go through EH&S. We'll work with Shane to come visit your particular site. I know also College of Ag has brought Shane in and his group to work at our feed mill and help bring ag up to a standard and to have more of a beneficial symbiotic relationship and work together. I know sometimes people fear the regulator, but we want to work together. It's the same message that Shane's putting out for his customers, the same message we're putting out for our K-State community. So with that, we wanted to give you a certificate of appreciation and swag bag here, and appreciate your time and introduction. With that, again, if anybody has any questions or comments on email or even something later on this week, or after the fact, don't hesitate to email EH&S or even Shane.
Yeah, you want one of my cards, they're right here, and I'll stick around a little bit after. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe. Oh.